What's good, everybody? Hopefully everyone is doing well. Thank you for joining us this evening for yet another top three event. It's been a little while since we've done one of these, and I really, really enjoy them. I hope you enjoy them as well. And we're going to be doing something a little bit different. We did top three cartoons of the 1990s, and we started discussing about it offline, myself and my guest tonight, and we said, we have a lot of reruns from the 80s that we grew up with, and so why don't we do top three cartoons of the 80s? And that's how we got here this evening. So my friends, here is Blake Scott Ball is back. Blake, how are you, buddy?
Hey man, I'm doing great. Thanks for
Good.
having me again.
Oh man, this is going to be great. I'm really excited to be doing this. And for everyone watching too, hopefully my internet holds out as the host because we're getting some massive storms that are supposed to be coming through. So, hopefully this will go off without a hitch. But Blake, that was what was fun about the last one we did, was the fact that I said I wanted to do the top three of the 80s, and you're like, no, we're going to do 90s. And I'm like, okay, that's a little bit out of my range, but okay, let's do it. And then when you started choosing them, you're like, wow, I didn't realize how many reruns there were.
Yeah. So many of the cartoons that were like core to my kid Saturday morning memories. When I started looking at it, I was catching them coming out of the '80s,
Right.
and so yeah, it was kind of a no brainer. We had to go back and do this one. This
Yeah.
one, the
Good.
cartoons for this one might be even harder to pick than last time, honestly.
I think
There's
I
so
think they
many
are
good ones.
too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I I'll be honest to everyone watching. I know his list. I didn't copy it. It didn't influence mine. Mine was already done. But I looked at his list and I looked at mine and I'm like, yeah, there's a lot we left out that is I was hoping you were gonna cover, some ones that were, like, oh man, this is gonna be good. This is gonna be good. But yeah, so the format tonight, everyone watching who hasn't watched one of these before, Blake and I are going to go one by one up our list, and we're going to we're going to start, excuse me, at number three, and then we're going to introduce you to our choices, and then you get to vote in the chat for which one you like better. Really, it's like whose line is it anyway, where the points don't matter. It's just our way of doing something to get everyone in here involved in what we're doing. So we'll do number three, and then obviously go up to two, and then one. But between each round, you are going to be able to vote. We also hope that you've brought along your own top three picks, so you can yell at us for leaving some out, and remind us of ones we may have forgotten, because the 80s were a wild time, and we were watching a lot of Saturday morning cartoons and some other stuff, and some of them might have slipped through the cracks. I don't know.
You know
But
that that's the big memory of all this for me is the lost convention of Saturday morning cartoons.
mm,
I mean,
mhm,
it was an experience because we didn't have any way of, like it wasn't on demand. You had to
no.
watch things when they were on.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Saturday morning is when it was on.
Yeah. We purposely did nothing Saturday mornings. And even our early teen years, we're like, I'm not going over
Uh,
anybody's house. I'm not going outside right now, because we used to go outside,
yeah.
because we were inside until like noon on Saturday.
Uh-huh.
You
Yep.
know,
Oh,
and it was
yeah.
like,
All the best stuff.
yeah, oh yeah,
It
oh yeah.
was it was the only day of the week I was excited to wake up early.
That's true. That is true. Yeah, yeah, because you knew you were gonna catch it all. Like, if you woke up at like
Uh-huh.
9 o'clock, you already missed half of them.
You missed half of it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you had to get up by 7, I think is what it was.
Yep.
You had to be in
Yep.
front of the TV at 7. So Lisa, welcome in. Saturday morning cartoons was my church. Yeah, that sounds like me and my family. That was the one church I was never kicked out of. So there you go. But hopefully you brought along your list, list, Lisa. I will get this out sooner or later. I need more coffee. But hopefully you brought your lists. Everyone else, I hope you brought your list too, and you can get on us about our choices. And we brought some tidbits and maybe some bar trivia for all of you if you need this. And we also brought some shout outs to ones that may not have made our top 3, because as Blake said, this is a tough one.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll dive right in. Are you ready, buddy?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay, we are going to go into number 3 first, and I'm going to do some magic here with the screen. So you go right ahead and introduce your number 3 pick, my friend.
Okay, my number 3 pick is the 1984 classic Muppet Babies. Muppet Babies.
Yes.
Now, Muppet Babies actually began as a spin-off of an idea from the 1984 The Muppets Take Manhattan. That classic movie. And there, during one of the scenes, Miss Piggy has a flashback to when they were all babies, and they do Baby Muppets, and so the cartoon developed out of that just a little sketch idea in the movie.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Ran 8 seasons, 107 episodes. It was on CBS Saturday morning. So, like I said, Saturday morning, you had to be up, and you did not mind it. That was the one day of the week I was always up before my parents.
Yeah.
Me and my little sister, we were up, we were watching the cartoons, and you kind of had mapped out where and when, what network you need to be on to catch the hits, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things I love about the Muppet Babies was a lot of the humor coming out of the 70s, especially. I feel like a lot of the humor and comedy of the time was very extremely pop culture referential. And we still do this in like sitcoms like Big Bang and things like this, do this, but it was very, like, you had to know the names of actors, you had to know movies, you had to know music, and all these different things, because they would make quick jokes about very specific things. And as a kid, it could be a lot to keep up with, because I don't have a clue who these people are, right? But one of the things that I loved about Muppet Babies was that it was really like a modern pop culture education. I mean, every episode was based around some classic movie. It might be something from the 30s or the 40s, or it might be some of the more recent, at that time, kind of modern classics like Indiana Jones or Star Wars, things like that. But as the characters sort of played through their adventure and imagined their way through these classic movies, you learned the plots and the famous lines and the references that you could then turn around and converse in the world of the late 80s and 90s.
We also saw that when they rebooted the Muppet Show, when they just rebooted a couple years back, and it was like you had to know everything going on. It was like Saturday Night Live with Muppets,
Yeah.
So they've always been kind of that way, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And here's the thing about watching that type of comedy in those decades. There was no internet. So if someone makes a reference, I can't just real quick Google it. There was no Google. There were no search engines. So like you you had to know, or you had to ask somebody, and you had to, and in that way, I think there was a really neat social element to a lot of media and entertainment at this time, especially for kids, because older siblings, your parents, your grandparents, your teacher at school, like
Mhm.
these were people who had access to understanding these things and could fill you in on it, and so it was, you learned person to person.
Yeah. 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 Who knew? We would
Right.
pre-internet, you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and that's so true. Is that we watch cartoons now differently, and I will admit I still watch them because I grew up with them. But if I want to
Yeah.
stream a certain episode of the Muppet Babies or whatever cartoon it is, you can do it that
Mhm.
quickly. If you
You go
missed
right
it,
to it.
you missed it back in the day, and then
Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
heard about it. Yeah,
Uh-huh. Yep, yep.
yeah, very
Uh,
true.
another another great thing about Muppet Babies, Jim Henson, creator of the Muppets, and Sesame Street, and other things, Fraggle Rock, and all kinds of great things.
Mhm, mhm,
Jim Henson was still alive during these years, so he played a role in helping produce this. Of course, he tragically passed away way too young, age
mhm.
53, in 1990. Um, but yeah, through most of these years, Jim Henson and the Mupp it was a big ongoing thing, and so the cartoon was a really cool kind of stand beside, and it didn't, even though it was about baby versions of the characters, it never felt like a baby show, which was really important for, especially for a little boy in the '80s who's getting a steady diet of He-Man or GI Joe and stuff like that. Like, you needed to be able to feel like you weren't too much of a wimp if you were also watching Muppet Babies.
That's right.
Um, but it was fun, and it was adventurous, and it was imaginative. Everything plays out as um, they're trying to solve their problems, and they solve them through these kind of imaginary scenarios, and um, you know playing together through these classic movies.
Yeah, that's so good.
Yeah,
I watched that one. So yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
It didn't make my
All right, what's
list,
your
but I watched it.
okay? Okay, what's yours? What's number three?
Okay. Number three for me is one that you uh, hinted at in your description here on this one. My number three is the man, He Man. You gotta go with He Man, the
Oh yeah.
Masters of the Universe is my number three.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And I love this photo. This is just a great photo. It's like the seductive Skeletor looking thing again here with this going on. And that's why I picked it. I'm just like, oh
Why
god,
why am I here? Why am I hearing Celine Dion? My heart will go on. Play,
yes, yes,
arms
yes.
around.
Skeletor's my guy, and that's just the thing. In fact, when I'm streaming on another platform and I do my end screen, it's him going through a mirror and then his hand coming back out and punching the mirror so the mirror breaks. Yeah,
Oh wow.
yeah, yeah. That's my end screen for that. So He-Man debuted in 83, September of 83, and ran until 85. The crazy part is it has two seasons, but each season is 65 episodes. It is like 138, I think, total were made of He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. So it's not like two seasons, 15 each. It's 65 episodes going
Yeah.
on, which is crazy.
Yeah.
That's unheard of, you
Yeah.
know.
Well, so there is, you know, uh, this may end up, the more we do these episodes, John, the more I'm thinking I may just end up having to do do a future project on the history of cartooning in America.
Mhm, mhm.
Because especially in this period, there's so much good stuff. So like He-Man is coming out of um, a very famous low budget studio called Filmation Studios.
That's right.
And Filmation Studios, one of the reasons that they're able to produce so many of these episodes so quickly is that they're one of, especially by the early 80s, um, they're one of the last animation studios that has survived the recession of the 70s.
Mm,
A
mhm.
lot of There had been some big time animation projects in the 70s, like um, some fantastic stuff, like all of the like Bakshi stuff. What was that? Uh, oh, now I'm blanking on they did a lot of photorealistic cartoon animations,
Oh,
and
yeah. Yeah, yeah.
and you also have the big like Lord of the Rings cartoons, different two different versions animated,
Yep.
that come out. Those are all big projects, and they were
Mhm,
supposed to bring in like this new golden age of animation. And then the economy tanks, and a lot of these guys were out of jobs. These studios closed, and so it was these low budget, very kid oriented studios like Filmation that kept these guys in work
mhm,
in these years in the 80s. And so
mhm.
He-Man is a classic example of some really talented folks doing what they had to do to make ends meet
Mhm.
in a tough time, and changing kid culture uh, in the process.
Yeah. Yeah. And they're checking off a couple boxes, which I'll go over here in a second. But Lisa is already letting me know that her number three is Smurfs. A very respectable choice.
Excellent.
Very respectable.
Excellent.
Very respectful choice there. Um, with He Man, this is the first syndicated show based on a toy. And that's something a lot of people don't realize. I mean, and we knew that He Man was with Mattel. Uh, uh,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
was Masters of the Universe is what it was known as, that toy line. This is a
Uh-huh.
spin-off of that later, and so this is the
Uh-huh.
original of that. Several spin-offs occur because of this. So this is like
Mhm.
the foundation of certain other spin-offs, including Masters of the Universe versus the Snake Men, Masters of the Universe Revelation, which was more geared towards adults, She-Ra, Princess of Power,
Mhm.
which
Mhm.
she was also in I think the second season, if not the first season of He-Man, and then
Yep.
He-Man, the Masters of the Universe, obviously. Um, uh, the original series takes place on the planet Eternia. I couldn't remember the name of the planet.
Yeah, that's right. That's
Eternia.
right.
And his He-Man's quote real name was Prince Adam, and I
Uh-huh.
forgot that too. So yeah, that's the one thing that I had to write down. By 1984, this starts in 83. By 1984, it can be seen in 30 countries already within 1 year, that's astronomical in 1984. You know, like you
Yep.
said,
Yep.
no internet, no streaming, no Google, and this thing is seen in
Mhm.
30 countries in 1984. Uh,
Mhm.
by 1985, it is the most popular show amongst kids ages 2 to 11.
Wow.
So yeah, this is a cool thing for you nerds out there. Okay, I found this out, and I never knew this either. Early script writing was performed by J. Michael Straczynski. Anyone know who he's the creator of? Babylon 5. He's
Whoa.
Yeah, early script writing, J. Michael Straczynski. Also script writing, and you'll appreciate this, Blake. Also script writing was Paul Dini and Bryn Stevens.
Yep. Yep.
Later wrote for Batman the Animated Series.
Yes.
Uh, and David Wise did some script writing for the show, and he's later the head writer of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So everyone's
Excellent.
getting this foundational like feel of of the animation
Uh-huh.
world in the early 80s, and then
Uh-huh.
they're taking it elsewhere. It's kind of like the Daily Show of cartoons. You get the people in there writing, and then all of a sudden, or showcasing their talents on camera, and then they get the spin-offs going, and it goes from there.
Uh-huh.
So I
Uh-huh.
think that's why He-Man was number 3 for me. Plus, I had Castle Grayskull as a kid, so that
Oh
was
yeah.
the one thing
Yeah.
I had was Castle Grayskull. I didn't have a lot, but I had Castle Grayskull. So
Well,
yeah,
and that's another key factor that that will come up in some of our other choices is like you said, toys. Toys
yeah,
were driving this, and
yeah.
in fact, I've so I'm currently, as you know, John, I'm currently
Mhm,
working on a new book on the history of Batman,
mhm,
and so in some of the interviews with Paul Dini, who helped create and write Batman the Animated Series, he talks about some of those meetings at Filmation, where Mattel would actually come in with uh, character sketches. They would draw characters, or they might have a name, or they might just any sort of idea that came about. They present it to the writers. He says the writers would be, what is this? And say, that's your job. You 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 create it, you work it into the story. Whatever. For a long time, they weren't sure. It's He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. Paul Dini said, I remember a meeting where we're sitting there and going, but wait, who are the Masters of the Universe?
mhm,
It was just a name, and they had to
yeah,
create what that meant, what the lore behind it was,
mhm, mhm,
because it really was from from the business perspective, it was about a 22-minute commercial to sell toys to kids.
yes,
But the awesome thing is that these guys took it and said, "Hey, if I got to work on this, 40 hours a week plus as my day job, I want it to mean something." And so they work out actual meaningful stories out of this material that was just haphazardly thrown together.
mhm, mhm. Yeah, I mean, that's amazing that the thought process of these kinds of creations and how it's put
Mhm.
into, how it's put into work, and how we would see it kind of as haphazard today and say, how could they
Mhm,
even
mhm.
make anything out of this? Or but I found sometimes that the best written works sometimes come out of chaos. And
Yeah,
I
yeah.
have a very chaotic brain sometimes, and then all of a sudden it's like the blog post just appears in my head, and it's like,
Mhm,
oh, that's what
mhm,
I'm trying to say. uh
mhm.
it's just that moment where you need to calm down and just listen, and then sometimes it
Yeah,
works,
yeah.
for some of us.
Well, and yeah, yeah, right. Sometimes the best thing to overcome that chaos is or overcome kind of the blank page is a deadline. If you
Yeah,
have to have something and there's no option, you can come up with something.
yeah, yeah,
And the more you do that, the better you get at coming up with stuff. But I've heard so many of these guys as writers and creators talk about that very thing, where um, you know they have sort of a maybe a not as fully fleshed out as they would have wanted pitch that gets greenlit, and then you have
mhm,
a deadline and you got to make something, and then rubber meets the road, right?
right,
You got to start generating this stuff, and some really neat stuff. But it's also why when you watch kind of any of these great programs from the beginning, they kind of morph for a bit.
mhm, mhm,
Some elements that were there early on sort of vanished to the background. You see that they, for whatever reason, they might have been too difficult to repeat, or
yeah,
they just didn't connect well. They didn't generate enough story ideas, so they kind of fade out, and other things take off. And then you can
right,
see when they start getting some audience response, because there's a real delay on these things. If you're going if you're going to market with 65 episodes in a
Yeah.
season,
Yeah.
there was a lot of work and writing that went into this before you ever got any response from audience.
Yep. Yep.
And then you see them reacting to that feedback. So it changes, and it morphs, and that's a good
Mhm.
lesson for any of us doing anything. Like, it's okay that a thing is not perfect, because the reality is that the best things that people make change over time. They change
Yeah.
over time. They adapt. You know,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
never, don't feel bad about that.
Yeah, and some people are like me where I do my best work under pressure, and so if I know something's not due for 6 months, I'll wait till the 5-month mark, and I do it.
Yeah, yep,
Because if I
yep.
do it too early, then I change a lot of things and I lose my
Uh-huh,
voice.
uh-huh,
You
uh-huh.
lose that
Yep,
written
yep,
voice, the authenticity's gone, and I'm like,
yep.
I wanna get it all out there, like, 4 weeks ahead of time and be like, "Here, take it, I don't wanna see it again," because
Yeah,
then
yeah.
I'll second guess everything I do, and I
Mhm,
can't do that
mhm.
with my future dissertation. I totally understand that. When I'm doing book reviews or stuff like that, I have a book review over here sitting here. I've had it since January. It's due in August. I've read it. I have not touched the writing part of it because I'm not ready.
Yeah, yeah,
In
yeah,
about 2 weeks,
yeah.
when we're into July, it'll happen. And sometimes you see that with these cartoons and all that stuff happening too, and
Mhm,
even
mhm,
sitcoms and other things. Like you say,
mhm,
it changes over time, and that's why it's okay just to jump in after you've done a little research. If you jump in and see something's not working, and it's okay to pivot,
uh-huh. Yep,
that's life,
yep,
and
yep.
the goal is not a straight line. It never is on the
Yeah,
map.
yeah,
There's
yeah,
always ravines and lakes, and something needs a bridge over it, and you don't, that's the way a map is.
yeah.
So
And you're never, you're never done. Again, whatever it is that you do, you're never done till you quit.
that's right.
Right?
That's
You're
right.
never done till you quit. No matter how many times that it doesn't go over the way you wanted it to,
Yeah.
you learn from it, you pivot, you take what was good about it, and
Mhm.
move forward, get better at it the
Mhm.
next time.
Yeah.
And so yeah.
Yeah.
And
That's how I
so
feel about
many,
life.
yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
know?
And
It's like,
and
I don't quit till it's double zeros or triple zeros on the clock, you know?
yeah,
Then it's
yeah,
done.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, yep.
Speaking of triple zeros on the clock, the vote is in. Thank you
All
to
right.
our one voter. I appreciate you. We got 4 watching, we got 1 voter, we got 25% voting rate in here. That's good for America.
Yeah,
That's
it's
good
good
for
enough for
America.
America.
It's about average. Muppet Babies with the win for the first round. So there
Hey,
you
all
go.
right.
Muppet Babies for the win. Special shout out, Lisa. Thank you for sticking around with us today. Everyone else who's here, please say where you're from the chat. Introduce yourself. Let me know where you're at.
Yeah.
Also want to give a special shout out to Greg. He is the first member of my page. I've got to move over here to say it. He is the first member of my page. So thank you for being a member, Greg. Um,
Excellent.
that means a lot, and that goes right back into the till as far as this project is concerned, because we now have monetization on YouTube. Woo! It's fantastic. So, uh, oh, Lisa, you're in Frederick, Maryland. Awesome, awesome. Welcome in.
Mhm.
So we have round one done. Our number 3 picks are in. And again, our number 3 picks for anyone who's just now joining us, Blake picked the Muppet Babies, and I picked He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. So that's a good start. That's a good
Yeah,
start.
heavy
Now we
hitters
got,
out the gate. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I made these little teasers up here for voting between the one, so I didn't accidentally click to the next one and show it off. So it is your time, my friend, to go to your second, no, oh, your number
Okay.
2 choice.
Okay. Number 2, greatest
Yes.
cartoons of the 80s. Inspector Gadget. Inspector Gadget. Da da
Yes.
da da da. Inspector Gadget.
I say I have that in my head every day. Still.
It's so good that again, hitting some themes here of the '80s kids cartoon experience. Great theme songs, great theme songs.
Yeah.
So many of these shows. It was the same with the adult sitcoms. So many of these shows hooked you right out the gate with a great theme song. It was singable, it was memorable, and it was just uh, musical bliss every time. So this show comes out of 1983, if I'm remembering
Mm.
correctly. Um, and or yeah, and 86 episodes, a lot like He-Man. It's only 2 seasons, and so it's
Wow.
like huge uh, episode runs in each season.
Wow.
Um, for this one, the creator is a guy named he came out of the famous '70s studio Hanna-Barbera,
Hmm.
where you're going to get Flintstones and Jetsons and Yogi Bear and all of it, Droopy, and
Yep.
all of these great shows. Um, Hayward then joined another thing that you see in 80s cartoons. So you've got kind of the low budget studios like Filmation and He-Man
Mhm.
in the US, but you've also got a lot of international players entering into into the American animation market. So this particular program, they might be coming out of Japan, they might be coming out of Korea. This particular program came out of a company called DIC out of France.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah.
they were so they were based in Paris. This is a French cartoon, produced in France for
Mhm.
American audience, and then redistributed all over the world. The concept kind of blends two of Hayward's favorite um, TV shows, one being the excellent comedy kind of satire of James Bond by Mel Brooks, Get Smart, from
Oh, yeah.
1965.
Yeah.
Get Smart, such a great, and in fact, Don Adams, who played Maxwell Smart, the special
Mhm.
agent
Mhm.
in Get Smart, voices Inspector Gadget.
Oh, I didn't know
So
that.
so yeah. So
Wow.
direct
Wow.
connection there to the inspiration.
Yeah.
The other inspiration is a show from the '70s. It was a huge TV show with its own spinoff called The $6 Million Man,
Mm.
about this bionic man,
Yeah.
and all of his special abilities. Now, of course, the joke in Inspector Gadget is that oftentimes all of these incredible bionic abilities he has, he for all of it, he's mostly a giant screw up. um his gadgets never work quite right, or he can't get the right one at the right time, and all of these sorts of things. And in
Yep.
fact, oftentimes what is happening is his niece Penny and their dog Brain are solving are solving the case in spite of Inspector Gadget.
Right.
Now he never fully realizes that it wasn't him that did it, but and in that way, it's kind of picking up on a, I think, a late 20th century theme as well that we saw run through sitcoms and things as well, where there's sort of this challenging to that whole father knows best concept, sort of
Mm.
challenging this idea of adult men always being competent and always being, always knowing the
Yeah.
solution to things. And so this was very much in that vein. Um,
I didn't think of that.
Another,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Another great element about this show is this is straight up Cold War culture. I mean, this is,
Mm,
80s Cold War kids. Uh, uh, Inspector Gadget is battling against Dr. Claw, who is this never seen. He's this very enigmatic, um, menacing figure who runs an organization known by the acronym MAD, MAD, and it's very much a sort of free West versus communist East kind of dynamic in this show. And so in this, we see, like so much of the 80s pop culture, we see how creators were taking dynamics of the world and sort of simmering them down to palatable versions for children. But through this, they were passing on the logic of the Cold War to children.
hmm. Wow. Yeah,
Yeah.
going back to those bigger ideas in
Mhm.
geopolitics and bringing it home
Mhm.
in that
Mhm.
way, because this is at the same time when you have uh, Fred Rogers doing his thing about community and
Yeah.
respecting each other and all this other stuff, and it's almost like the cartoons are taking that in the geopolitical sense, because
Mhm.
cartoons aren't apolitical, and
Right.
you wrote a book on comic strips and with peanuts, and they're definitely not apolitical, and
Right.
it's almost like on public television we were seeing how to treat each other nicely and be kind and generous and so forth through things like Sesame Street, Fred Rogers, others. And then you
Mhm.
see the cartoons, and they are also dipping their toes into the geopolitical sphere with, what some of the things that we're even talking about with our picks tonight. So there's got to be
Mhm.
more, parallels with this on stuff that's not even going to make our lists.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it makes total sense. Like creators don't have to it's what I think what we're not saying is that the creators of Inspector Gadget or He-Man or whatever were trying to push a political
Hmm.
viewpoint onto unsuspecting children.
Right.
What they're doing is they are creating art the same way that human beings have always created art, which is as an expression and a means of processing what what we live.
Right.
Right, it relates to us because in some way we connect to it because in some way it it helps us to make sense of or reminds us of the world we're living in.
Hmm.
And otherwise even when we go a long time ago in a galaxy far far away, we're still fighting the Cold War between the Jedi and the
Hmm.
Sith,
Right.
right? And
Right.
so it's it's not something that anyone necessarily does on purpose. It's just how we as human beings process our moment in history. One of the
Hmm.
ways that we process and express how we're feeling about things.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Even though I'm Lord Vader's team all the way, it's just I gotta be me. I gotta be. I actually have him on here as one of my sounds. So
Oh, that's excellent.
yeah,
That's excellent.
yes. So when anyone joins the channel as a member, you get to hear Lord Vader welcome you in because I have
We
there I
would
have
be honored if you would join us. We
so we
would be
gotta have
honored
so
if you
we
would join us.
we gotta have some Vader going on there. So yes, I'm Team Vader. But
Excellent.
yes, I completely
Excellent.
see that. And some people have said that it's also similar with fascism and freedom and those two
Mhm.
colliding
Mhm.
in different ways.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
yeah, absolutely. I gotta love Inspector Gadget though. He almost made my list because he's one of those that's still in my heart.
Oh
And
yeah.
as Lisa says, the theme is one you found yourself singing in the hallways of school. Yeah. And
Mhm.
everyone joined
Mhm.
in because everyone knew it.
Yep.
Everyone knew it.
Yep. That's right.
My number 2 pick is a little bit different, but it was another one that really I couldn't miss when I was a kid. The Transformers. I had to watch the Transformers when I was a kid. Now, the weird part about this whole thing is that I am not a big fan of the modern iteration of the Transformers, like the movies and stuff. I am still a kid at heart, and I will watch the original 80s Transformers. And you see this sometimes with people where they're like, I am a traditionalist. I am what we're going to talk about, which is generation 1 of the Transformers, because there are different generations. It sounds like we're talking about Deep Purple, the band. The different generations of purple. No, we're talking about the Transformers here, and I'm a generation 1 Transformer guy. I was born in 1980. These guys were on when I was a toddler, and getting up there into the double digits of my age. So they debuted in September of 1984 and ran until November of 87. Which for us, what we're talking about in these early lists is pretty long as far as the original series is concerned. He-Man only lasted a couple years, but it impacted so much. Transformers lasted 3 years, three and a half, give or take. Again, it is with my first one. It's based on a toy line, Hasbro's Transformers line, and then this comes out. As I said, this series, the original from 84 to 87, is known as Generation 1 because a generation came out in 92, which was not on our list, I don't think, of 90s as far as like shout outs, even was the Transformers, because by then my brain's already passed and I'm like, don't remember. 92 was Generation 2. So I'm talking Gen 1 here. And obviously it's the Autobots versus the Decepticons. 2 warring factions of alien robots that have been fighting for millennia, and they come to Earth to make this a new battleground in their fight for the galaxy. Again, another one where we're fighting over the galaxy, like He-Man. I'm just now connecting these two, where I'm like, I got an intergalactic thing going on here. The feature film, The Transformers, the movie, separated season 2 and 3. That is the OG Transformers movie. That's the one I will watch because it is the OG old school Transformers movie. Yeah.
And hey, if you're gonna highly recommend somebody watching it today, make sure you bring the Kleenex. Make sure you bring the Kleenex, because it's gonna rip your heart out.
Yeah, don't give it away.
Rip your heart out.
Oh man, I cried like crazy. I cried like crazy when I was a kid at that. I'm like, how does this happen?
You never expected robots to bring out so much emotion.
No. And now look, we're afraid of them when they're in like the giant food store telling us there's a cleanup on aisle 4. Reruns were consistent though for years, and that's why some of what we talked about when Blake and I were there with 90s, this was a thing in the 90s. It was rerun. Because remember, we had the recession in the 80s. There was a little bit of a boom period, and then there was a little bit of a downturn economically with Reaganomics, and then we start to see where instead of making new content, it's reruns. And if it's not broke, don't fix it. It's working.
Well, and this is also a period in TV history where the 80s is the rise of cable. And with the emergence of cable, one of the things that we see, and we've seen this in the streaming era, this like mad rush to everyone has their own, I mean, what we've got, do we have the Tattooed Historian Plus membership yet? Like everything's got a Plus membership.
Not yet.
It's not yet. We're getting there. And but in a lot of ways, like there's this mad rush to try and get content to fill up these spaces, and the same thing was happening in cable. And so the part of the reason that these companies would produce 65 episode seasons is because they're trying to get a big enough package of content to where they can, because syndicates would buy in bulk. So
Mhm.
they're trying to get a big enough package to sell into syndication, because once you get a show into syndication, then the original company and creators can get continuing residuals. So they continue to get paid each time that runs. And so a lot of times we say, if you miss something when it aired the first time, you did miss that. But with things in syndication, you might pick it up in the summer, right? So in the
Right.
summer,
Right.
after the season ends, they would go back through and they would run a bunch of the previous episodes, and they might run them
Mm.
2 or 3 times during the summer. So you could catch up, just a different part of the year after everybody else.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
We always love those summer reruns because we were out of
Yeah.
school and we can
Yep.
catch up on
Yep.
everything we missed because we
hmm
were too tired or had too much homework or whatever the case may be.
There were so many times when I had that experience of in the summer I'd watch whatever show during the year. In the summer I catch an episode and I'm like, oh, now the whole second half of this last season makes
It
sense. I
makes
had no
sense.
idea what was going on because I missed this key episode.
Yep. Yep. I remember feeling like that. Excuse me. I don't know if you remember, there was a part, there were several cutout scenes made along the way where Optimus Prime as a puppet is interacting. It's a large scale puppet, obviously, is interacting with a young boy. And they
Yeah.
are conversing about like after school PSA stuff and other things like that. It ran separately and it was kind of like cutout scenes to promote because they wanted to get on the backs of that G.I. Joe thing, the more you know, and knowing is half the battle and all this other stuff. They tried to jump on that with Transformers, and they had this large Optimus Prime puppet kind of thing interacting with this young boy about some kind of after school special kind of thing where it was a little bit of a cut scene and they got to do that puppet. Here's your bar trivia, everybody. That puppet was operated by Martin P. Robinson. Now, to many of you, that name may not ring a bell, but this will. Martin P. Robinson was the same man who controlled Mr. Snuffleupagus on Sesame Street. So there you
Wow.
go. He is Optimus Prime as the puppet and Snuffleupagus. So Snuffy and Optimus Prime are one and the same because it was the same operator. So there you go. There's your little bit of bar
That's
trivia
excellent.
for
That's
that.
excellent.
So we got
So good.
so we got round 2 finished up. Excuse me, I don't know why I'm choked up. It's bring back all the emotions. Inspector Gadget is Blake's pick for number 2. And mine is the original Gen 1 Transformers. Voting is now open. There are 3 of you. Let's see if we can get 1 vote at least going here. For this particular. Oh, we got 1 vote. We're off to a good start. Come on, America. Vote early, vote often. I'm also hoping that everyone enjoys the background for this because I wanted to spice things up with something a little different. And thank God for Canva.
Yeah.
So there you go. Also, I want to
The
give
design looks great, man.
Yeah, thank you. I'm getting good at some things, and this is one of them where I'm like, hey, I can excuse me, I can pull this off. That's good. Let me take this banner down because I want to showcase a comment from Lisa here. Number 2 can't be classified as 80s, but originally aired in the 60s, 70s. That'd be the Scooby-Doo episodes. There you go. Yeah, that's another thing where it's like we remember it from the 80s, but it's 60s, or we remember it from the 90s and it's 80s. So
Yep.
Definitely.
My kids. So I've got 3 girls who are currently 10, 7, and 4, and their new big discovery this summer is Scooby-Doo. They are so into the old Scooby-Doo cartoons.
Nice.
So lots of Scooby-Doo at my house right now, which is great. I love it.
That'll bring back memories.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's some good stuff. So again, voting's open, everybody. I know there are only 3 of you in here, and it's probably counting me as one because I have another screen opened up with this. That's okay, because many people will watch the video on demand is the way usually it happens now. Everyone's so zoomed out from the pandemic, and I totally get it. But hey, thank you all for being here and hanging out with us this evening. I'll let the vote go another minute or two before we close it. And then we're going to go to the grand finale, which is the number 1 pick, and our shout outs to those that didn't make our list, but definitely deserve a shout out. So, how are things going with Batman?
It is going great. In fact, I'm about to here in the next week or so. I probably should. I have some news we'll be releasing about publisher and publication date and those things. So it is full speed ahead. I am having a blast. It is, if you can get somebody to pay you to work on things that you love doing anyways, I highly recommend it. So it's a lot of fun.
Yes, totally. I can't wait to hear about that. That's gonna be great. So I am losing tonight. Inspector Gadget with the win.
Oh no!
I am 0 for 2 tonight.
See, the problem is I can't vote because honestly, I would have voted for. I mean, I like my picks, but you got some great picks.
Oh,
I would have voted for yours. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, hey, it's fine because I'm hosting you. The guest should be pulling out the victory here. I don't want to make it seem like it's rigged or something. So we got to go to our number 1 pick before we start talking about those that slightly were off of our list. So Blake, number 1 1980s cartoon.
All right, number 1, closest to my heart. Batman animated series was my 90s like ride or die. In the 80s for me, it was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I was obsessed.
Not we all.
10 seasons, 193 episodes. Ran on CBS. These, of course, are sort of cartoonized versions of characters that were created by young comic hopefuls, Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird. They, in 1983, founded in their rented house, they founded what they called Mirage Studios, and they came up with this story of these like Ronin ninja mutated turtles who lived in the sewer and loved to eat pizza, but also mutilated the secret ninja army trying to take over the underground of New York City. They printed the first issue on like a Kinko's machine in 1984. It sold so fast they couldn't keep up. It was an underground smash hit. Of course, licensing and selling this cartoon deal made these guys millionaires. Another big hit was licensing out the characters to a toy company in Japan that went by the name Playmates. Toys. In 1988 comes out with a line of the original line, including the 4 Ninja Turtles. John, you remember names?
Oh yeah. Michelangelo, Raphael, Leonardo, and Donatello.
Yeah. So all kind of classic artists,
Mhm.
and these four characters, along with Shredder, the villain, um, and Master Splinter, they went on to be just a mega hit. In fact, as I was doing some research on this, I was finding news stories in 1990 talking about Turtle Mania. Turtle
Mhm.
Mania.
Mhm.
Of course, in 1990, that summer, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the movie, came out
Yep.
with really some great costumes and really unique um, kind of animatronic faces
Yeah. Yeah.
on these characters. Um, uh, Mutant Ninja Turtles movie was so cool. Really good, big hit. Vanilla Ice has a big cameo and a dance
Yep.
scene in the movie. So it's very much of its time.
That's right.
Um, and this remembering this show also brought back memories, and I had to dig it up to make sure that I was remembering it right. But in 1990, Burger King Burger King through their Burger King Kids Club. You remember the Burger King Kids
Yep.
Club?
Yeah, I was a part of it. Yes.
Oh yeah, oh yeah,
Yeah,
it
yeah.
was huge. Everybody, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Burger King's Kids Club. If you were a member,
Mhm.
you could with the purchase of a Happy Meal, you could get a special edition um, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles VHS tape. They had
Yeah.
four different ones that they sold. They
Yep.
sold them for $3.49 a piece. $3.49 a piece, and
Yep.
you could get some extra episodes that were not on TV. You
Mhm.
bring them home, watch them. I convinced my mother to get me all four of them. It took a lot of work going to different Burger Kings, but we
Yeah.
man, I loved. In fact, when I turned 5, this would have been um, uh, maybe 4 or 5, 1990 or 1991. My birthday cake was decked out Ninja Turtles. It was all
Oh,
Ninja
man.
Turtles. Oh man,
Wow.
that was life for me at that age.
Yeah. Who was your favorite?
My favorite was, and this is the first instance of this, and it kind of repeated itself throughout my childhood. So it kind of, you know, subconsciously said something about me, I think. My favorite was Donatello.
That was my
I
favorite.
like, yes, I love
Yeah.
Donatello because Donatello, he was the brains of the operation.
Yep.
He was the thinker. He was the,
Level-headed.
uh-huh,
Yeah.
yep, yep. And
Yep.
I loved him. I loved all four of them, but Donatello was my guy.
Raphael drove me nuts.
Yeah.
I was like, "Quit being so quick on the trigger here, calm down."
The
You know?
hothead. Yep.
And he was a little
Yep.
too childish for me in that way, and I'm like, I
Yeah.
can't deal with
Yeah.
this guy," and
Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
Donatello is my guy. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
definitely. Mm.
Michelangelo was the wisecracker.
Yeah,
He was always good for the one liner.
yeah.
Cowabunga. You know.
I've figured out that, since going sober, I've turned into Michelangelo. 'Cause I'll just do that witty, like, comeback, and it's like, "Where did that come from?" And I just said that sober. Yeah. I can't hide behind that anymore.
Right.
I can't say, "Oh, I was a little tipsy." No, that's just me being a smartass.
That's pure me. Yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So, yeah, definitely.
Oh man.
Well, this is gonna be an interesting last vote, because, uh, my number 1 pick is also the Turtles.
Whoa!
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah. This is the one where we overlapped, and, obviously, we know why. This is a later cartoon iteration of them, but I wanted to do something a little bit different than yours and get my purple for Donatello up there. Um, but yeah, the thing that I really liked about, uh, the production process of the original thing, the original show was the fact, and you can see it today. If you go look at the comic books today, the comics are still going. You know, they're still producing comics.
And
they're very
and
dark.
There's some good ones. Kevin Eastman came back during the pandemic year 2020.
Mhm.
He came back and did have you seen this Last Ronin story?
Yes.
It was
Yeah.
it was like comic of the year. It's fantastic. So
Yeah.
there's if you're if you're the slightest bit interested, it is so different from the kids cartoon,
Oh yeah.
but it's well worth your time.
Yeah, it's basically the comic, and even in the 80s and in the early 90s and up to today, it's got that darkness of like a Punisher comic, you know, where
Yeah.
it's just got these dark themes and it's darkly lit, and everything else. That was the one thing with the production of the cartoon. They said we need to brighten it up, and they meant not only in color, they meant the storylines and everything else. So if you think the cartoon is going to be exactly like the comic book or vice versa, you're wrong, because it's two totally different worlds, you know. And I think maybe the first movie tried to dip their toe in that water because it was a little bit darker themed, and you know, when you go into sewer it was dark, and you go down to these places and it was dark, but it was still for kids, and it was still for you know, young adults. The comic book though is still beloved by people our age, because it does have that element of what we grew up with, but it's also got the dark themes that we have grown up with as well, from the Punisher or Ghost Rider or other comic books that have that dark kind of theme to it. So I mean, we see it with Superman, we see it with Batman, we see the darker themes. The Turtles weren't really any different, and they cleaned it up, I guess you could say, made it brighter for us when we were 5 to 10 years old, and it worked, it clicked, and it made it was the best in the world as far as I was concerned when I was that age. I was like, wow, it's everywhere. You know, I had everything Turtles. I had all the figures. I had the van. I had everything going. And that little thing that that like world thing that Krang used to be inside of. I had that. You know, so this was the thing where I didn't have a lot, but I had a lot of this. So I knew it was really impacting my life. So TMNT is my number one. The other way you can say that you can see that it climbed in popularity, we're not talking like He-Man in 69 episodes or 68 episodes in a season. We're going back now, 5 episodes in season 1 in 87, 13 in 88, so it more than doubled, and it jumps to 47 in 1989. So you can see they see the money and they see the potential, and by 89 they're going through the roof. So I didn't touch the 90s, but it accelerates even more by the time Burger King does their thing and the movie and all that comes out. So you can see that it has a lot of traction, and it's still beloved by all of us who were there when it first dropped. And we were like, wow, what is this? This is crazy. And we're like 6 to 10 years old, and you know, it's nuts. I mean, what I say was 87, right? 87. So I was 6 going on 7 that year. So I was already ready for this.
You were perfect age for it. There was a great arcade video game theme Ninja Turtles that I love to play at Showbiz before it was Chuck E. Cheese. Just so much great about Ninja Turtles. Loved it.
You can't go wrong. Lisa's number one pick would have been Alvin and the Chipmunks. There you go.
Solid
choice.
One of my dad's favorite dad things was to buy. Did you ever see any of the Alvin and the Chipmunks like albums that they would put out where it would be, like Alvin and the Chipmunks do classic country or Alvin and the
Mhm.
Chipmunks do, whatever. My
Yeah.
dad loved to get those albums and blast them on the radio.
Oh my
He
gosh.
thought it was so funny.
We played the Christmas album every year for Christmas when I was
Oh
really
yeah.
young.
Oh yeah.
You had
Yeah.
to play that one, and it was like the
Yep.
dad
Yep.
yelling at the it was
Yeah.
or whatever, the
Alvin!
adult yelling at them all the time, like, keeping them in line. Yeah, I remember all that. What other ones did you have that you, that just didn't make the list, but they're honorable men?
Okay. Okay. Transformers was one was very high on my list.
Mhm,
He-Man was very high on my list. Um, Another one that I really liked. Um, let's see. Well, two kind of ghost themed cartoons that I really liked. The Real Ghostbusters, 1986,
okay,
was a cartoon based on the movie.
right.
And Slimer played a really big kind of featured role in the cartoon
Mhm.
that, he just kind of has that one library scene in the, or the, is it library, or are they're at the hotel, maybe that old hotel, either one,
I
whatever it
thought it was
was.
the library,
Uh,
but maybe I'm wrong. I don't
yeah,
remember.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I thought it was a library too. Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyways, so Slimer was a lot bigger in the cartoon, and something that the Real Ghostbusters also had going for it was a really yummy tie-in cereal. They had
Oh,
tie-in
yeah.
cereal that was
Yes.
it was had Ghostbuster marshmallows in it, and yeah, it was really good. And of course, they
Yeah,
had the theme song of the movie on the
right.
cartoon. Yeah, so it's a win. I
Wasn't
also
the marshmallows ghosts?
yes,
Yeah,
yep,
yeah, I
yep,
remember that.
yep,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So all of these, it's really amazing. And it would go off today. It would probably go off like a bit more like a lead balloon. Like you can't be so uh uh what's the word? You can't be so crass going after kids,
Mm.
the
Right,
kid market
right,
today.
right.
They got to be a little more. But in the '80s, like it
Oh,
was
yeah.
like full on heat seeking missile. We're coming for mom and dad's wallet, and
Yep.
we're going for it via your 6-year-old kid.
Yeah, yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
and so yeah, a lot of tie-in stuff.
Mhm.
Another one I really liked was the Beetlejuice cartoon.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I remember
Beetlejuice was a Michael Keaton movie
that.
with
Mhm.
Tim Burton. The first time those two got together, also had Alec Baldwin and Winona Ryder, and really, really interesting, really weird movie.
Yeah.
It's incredible that that thing got made by a major studio.
Yeah.
Um,
That's
how Tim
crazy.
Burton pulled that off, I have no idea. But the show kind of played off all of the weirdness of the movie, and it like hit all the right beats for, I guess, my inner goth kid that
Mm.
kind of just kind of loved off kilter things,
Right.
even though I was pretty uh otherwise pretty straight laced kid. But and then I kind of feel like you can't get out of the '80s and not give some shout out to the Care Bears. Um,
Oh, yeah. That
Care,
was on my
Care,
short list.
yep, yep.
Yeah.
Care Bears. It was another one that is it geared towards. Was it geared towards kids, or was it geared towards your sister? Maybe, but you still liked it, and
Right.
you just you just sucked it up and enjoyed it anyways. Like
It was
it
part of
was good stuff.
it was part of the Saturday morning run
Yeah,
And we
Yep.
really didn't transplant ourselves from in front of the TV on Saturday morning. So you watched whatever came on, and
Yep.
that's how we kind of like. That's probably how we got to watch Care Bears. We wouldn't watch it normally,
Yeah.
but we're like, well,
Yeah.
you know, I only got 20 minutes before the next thing comes on. So
Yeah. And before you knew it, you're sitting there transfixed. Yeah.
Yeah,
It sucked you in.
exactly. Exactly. Lisa's got the same problem we did with 90s. She's like in the older stuff, Scooby-Doo, Flintstones, Jetsons. Yeah, I was a bigger Jetsons fan than I was Flintstones. I love the Jetsons.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah,
So
I
good.
watched that all the time. That was so
Yeah.
good too. I did watch the Smurfs a lot when I was young because again, it comes on in that block like right around the Care Bear time. And
Yep.
you know,
Yep.
I can't remember what it depended on where you were from, what order they came in, but they were usually like back to back a lot.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so you're gonna watch them back to back. You know, and then the other ones like Lisa is bringing up came on in between these from time to time, especially the older stuff tended to come on earlier.
Yeah.
And I think that's because they realize that some of the older kids are awake earlier than the younger kids, and this is all planned out. There's a reason, you know, why this is happening. So I think that's what's going on there. And obviously, like Lisa just said, obviously you got the Looney Tunes going on at the same time. You know, so this is all drawing us in on a Saturday morning. And you got to think, like Blake and I said, it's in like a 6-hour block, you know, and you get all that entertainment in 6 hours. And then it's like, all right, you know, that's about it. And that's why in the evenings, I have to watch things like Matlock with my grandfather because there's no cartoons on.
Yes.
There's nothing.
Yeah.
And you got to be like, you know.
Yeah. In the 90s, you know, the 90s, we ran into the fact that there was, you know, things like Nickelodeon came along, and then eventually Cartoon Network came along, where you could watch cartoons all day long.
Yeah.
But interestingly, to this point, and sort of a hangover from our experience in the 80s, Nickelodeon after dark turned into Nick at Night. And showed the old reruns that we also loved because we'd grown up watching them with our grandparents.
That's right. That's right.
So you know, so it was very much, and I do wonder for kids that are coming up now, or college kids now. Like, what is their like, we were exposed to generations of television. Because in some cases, because we had no choice. Like, it was just what there was to watch.
Right.
Now you can be so selective about what you watch that you could realistically grow up and never see an episode of I Love Lucy, or never see an episode of Scooby-Doo.
Yeah, that's a great point, because especially now, so many of us in the modern era have cut the cable. And we're streaming everything, and then our generation's having kids who are growing up without cable, and we're streaming whatever we want, and then we're saying, "Hey, watch this," you know, or whatever, to keep them busy and occupied. And obviously, your kids are going to tell you, you know, like your kids are watching Scooby-Doo now, so they know what they like, and they know where to find it. But like you say, they're not going to find some of this stuff because it's for us, this was our only entertainment for a lot of us. This is it. This is Saturday morning, and this is it. The rest of the time, like Lisa just said, after that, it's Wide World of Sports. Okay,
Yes,
this is it. Okay, this is our life. And you're
and for me, that was my cue to go out in the yard.
Right, and you're gonna sit and you're gonna watch Wide World of Sports, or like I said, my grandfather. You know, God rest his soul. I grew up in the home with my mother and my grandparents, and many times I was sitting with my grandfather watching TV, and I got the chance to watch my Saturday morning cartoons. But after that, it was like sports, and then in the evening, it was like Mike Hammer, Matlock, all this stuff. And then
Yeah.
today, it influenced me so much that even to this day, I'm like, my idea of staying inside and watching, TV is like watching Frontline documentaries. And I'm like, wow, I really didn't think about how I've been impacted. Yeah, I sound
Yeah.
like a great person to hang out with, don't I, chat? But just living it up over here. But it's because it's safe, and with someone who
Yeah.
has had issues with anxiety, probably ADD, I know what to expect from that. I don't know what to expect from some of the shows that you're watching. I didn't watch any of the Game of Thrones because I'm like, I don't know what to expect. I can't watch this
Yeah.
because it's so
Yeah.
out there.
Yeah.
I can't do it. But I'll
Yeah.
sit and watch documentaries all night because that's what I grew up with, or I'll sit and watch detective shows because that's what I
Yeah.
grew up with. So when we're
Uh,
talking about these kinds of lists, it really brings back some memories, but it also shows us why we watch what we watch, even to this
Yeah.
day, and what we're comfortable with looking back at or influencing how we see stuff. Because our generation grew up with this, and
Mhm.
look at all the animated shows we still watch because we
Yeah.
grew up with it, and we grew
Yeah.
now it's like I'm a huge Bob's Burgers fan and all this other stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's all based off of what we grew up with in the 80s and 90s,
Uh-huh. And I
you
do
know?
and I do think, one of the things um that really drives my historical research into these things um is the sense that I had all the way back to when I was a kid, because I've always been the person that asks way too many questions. But hey Blake, calm down. This is just a cartoon. Like, you don't have to take it that seriously.
Right.
But that was always me. I always wanted, oh, what's this about? And where did that come from? What's that reference about? And all, I just super interested and had lots of questions. And
Mhm.
I always felt like there was this general attitude of and there was, and people talk about this all the time, cartoons or comics or whatever, that's for kids.
Mhm.
And because of that, they can't have anything meaningful to say. they
Right.
can't they can't have any quality as art, or as deeper thought, or philosophy, or anything like this. But
Mhm.
the truth is that, actually, these things were really packed, and there was a lot of really creative, really intelligent people who were, maybe their work in that time was not being as respected as they might have hoped by wider audiences. But nonetheless, they took it seriously, and they
Mhm.
put serious thought into it.
Mhm.
And some of that got communicated to people who were watching, including kids who go, "Oh,
And
I mean, um, I did, and I failed to mention, um, I didn't realize, it makes total sense in hindsight, but Muppet Babies won like 7 Emmys. Muppet Babies won like
wow.
7 Emmys, including
Wow.
4 consecutive Outstanding Animated Series Emmys. So like, it was leading the field, and it was respected as, like, this is a kids show, but it is a kids show that's aspiring to be more than just mindless entertainment.
Right.
There's real thought and crafting and writing going into these shows. And I think more and more as time goes by and we look back, I think more people are recognizing, man, there was some real gems here, that
Mhm.
kind of flew under the radar because it seemed like, oh, that's just for the kid audience.
Mm. Well, it's such an important distinction uh, in that play is part of education, and
Hmm.
it's we never outgrow that element as much as people
Yeah.
want certain people to outgrow that or whatever else. uh we don't truly outgrow that, and we
Right.
always aspire to have fun with something, and if we learn something along the way, that's great. I'm meeting that roadblock with some people with gaming in the humanities or VR experiences in the humanities. It's kind of like a new route that we're going with what we call edutainment, and
Yeah.
that's it's been around forever, but we finally got a word for it, where it's
Yeah. Yeah.
edutainment. We've been edutained since
Yeah.
like Lisa said here, PBS, Sesame Street, Mr. Rogers, Reading Rainbow, edutainment. That's what it is. And
Mm-hmm.
this idea that we can't continue to be edutained in our adult life is silly. It's sillier than the stuff that they say is silly. And I just can't fathom a world without play. I think that's why some people are so uptight, is they just don't know how to play. And it's great if you want to collect TMNT comics and do all that. Fantastic. That there are worse things you could collect. And I'm sorry. I don't see how that harms anybody. We saw this with Pokemon. People were freaking out over Pokemon cards. They were like, "Oh, that's stupid." I'm like, "Are they collecting body parts? No, they're collecting that. Let them go. Let them have fun."
So, when you said there were worse things to collect, my mind immediately went to Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Well, you're right.
There are. We have a remake of 7 here really quickly, but no. So I don't like the dismissive nature sometimes of that, and it's like, come on. I mean, look at how many people were into Legos. Guess what? That's great. Fantastic.
Right.
I'd rather you do that than destroy something. I'd rather you build something than destroy. And I think the cartoons that we grew up with made us understand that we could escape for a little bit. And I'm sure you're going to be talking about this in your book about Batman and such, and you've spoken about some things with Peanuts. Where you can have some deeper thoughts about something, because there is a lesson, there is a moral to these stories in some form or fashion, and we can have some form of escapism at the same time, and that's what made it beautiful.
Well, and escapism, I find oftentimes what we call escapism is never about it's never ultimately about I want to leave the world and never deal with any serious stuff. Escapism is really about going to a space where it is safe and there are no serious consequences for exploring possibilities of how to address our problems. It is all of play is going to a sandbox and exploring where, building, creating things, trying things where if it all falls down, there's nobody's hurt, no consequence, no one ever. And I learned some things through what works, what doesn't work. And then I take that process that I've been through of creatively trying and erasing and starting over. I'm no fear of my mistakes. Then I can take what I learned back to the real world and get to where, it's the same way. It's the same way as, have you ever been really stressed about this happens to me sometimes. I don't know if it happens to other people. Really stressed about a problem. You go to sleep and you have a dream and you wake up and you've kind of come up with an idea while you were sleeping. You ever had this strike you? You know? And it again, it's that kind of comforting space where we can, without, like, nothing's on the line, right? Nothing's on the line. I'm not actually doing this, but I'm just exploring, thinking through, let's get out of the box. Let's get creative. Let's just think wild. What are some crazy possible ways that we could hit, that we could address this? And some of those end up being things, not the conventional path we might have taken, but we go, hey, that might work, right? That might work.
Right.
Oh man, you know,
Yeah.
or it's like experimenting in the kitchen. And
Mhm.
building a meal from whatever you got in the pantry, and sometimes you end up with some really terrible stuff, and sometimes you find a new favorite. You're like, oh man,
Yeah.
I never who knew those flavors went together.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. The
uh,
most dangerous thing for me to own is a whiteboard because I got the ideas flowing and I'm making arrows
yeah,
in different places. I'm like that gif of that guy who's got everything on the wall and he's pointing at it and he's got a cigarette. And that's how
yeah,
I see some of these. That's how I see some of these people who were coming up with not only cartoon ideas but also movie ideas. And like back in the
yeah.
day, and they're like, "Well, how do we make this stick? Or what direction should we take this?" Or sitcoms, even like he's
Mhm,
brought up "I Love
mhm,
Lucy." There's a
mhm.
ton of these kinds of brainstorming sessions in every episode
Yeah,
going on,
yeah.
and I'm sure some of these people, you know, went to bed thinking, "I don't know how this is gonna work, but I need to figure it out." Next morning, it's like, "Ah, I got it. Let's try this."
Mhm.
I mean, what's the worst that can happen? You know?
Uh-huh. Yep.
And yeah, it's all that creative process, and that's as part of having a creative mindset, right? Is that,
Yeah.
uh some people have that and some people don't, sadly, but I think we're
Mhm,
born with the curiosity. It's just some people are better at writing than others, some people are better at painting
mhm.
than others, and that's fine. It's one of these things where you find your niche and you run with it, and you
Uh-huh.
learn that through edutainment, and how
Uh-huh.
to do
Yeah.
that. So when we're making these lists like this and we're talking about these cartoons, that the lessons we learned in those cartoons still impact us to this day, you know?
Mhm. Yep, yep. And we could, there's a thousand other lessons we could talk about the lessons we learned from these characters about how to handle when you've hurt a friend's feelings, or
Mhm,
how to meet new people, or how
mhm,
to, all of these really important social aspects that we're not born knowing how to do. We're not
mhm,
born knowing how to do, and they can be quite difficult. And you know, something as simple as making a new friend seems like a silly thing from a Barney episode or something like this. But if you go to a new job or you move to a new
yeah,
town and you don't make some friends, your life and experience is not going to be good,
that's
right?
right.
Like that's going to be really difficult. And so, there's a lot of social and cultural and just human information that was being communicated through these programs to children, to, again, creative ways to think about in the real world. When I meet somebody, here's how I can show them that I want to be their friend, and that,
Mhm,
that I'm somebody they can trust, or, whatever.
right,
Um,
yeah. Yeah,
so yeah.
we weren't trained on how to ask somebody if they wanna come on our live stream, but you keep coming back, so this is great.
You figured it out, John. You
Hey,
Hey, when you keep coming up with fun ideas like this, I can't resist.
I know. I mean, we gotta, it's gotta be fun and it's gotta be laid back because we have too many who are uptight and serious. And,
Yeah.
and I just like to have fun. And this is why I don't get on
Yeah.
panels a lot, by the
Yeah.
way, because I usually go off the rails with something talking about it. And they're like, where did
Uh,
that come from? I have no idea where that came from. Actually, before we go, to pinpoint that, I actually did it's a lighthearted panel thing where
uh-huh.
friends of mine go around, they do historical talks and they do them at little pubs and places, and I don't drink, but that they asked me at the last minute, can you fill in because someone dropped out the last minute, and I said yeah, sure. And I was going to talk about this story from the middle of the Civil War, and that happened in my hometown. And I asked people there, I'm like, they all got, some really great stories going, and they were serious to the point and great, but entertaining at the same time because you got to know the room, and know where you're at.
Right, right.
You're not
Yep.
at SMH or something like that. And
Yeah.
And so me being me, I started out with how many in here have watched the Chappelle Show? And the guys look at me like, where the hell is this going? But I'm thinking back to those little things that are fun that got my attention
Mhm.
when I was younger. And I'm like,
Mhm.
I know someone
Mhm.
here is going to appreciate this. And I said, okay, then how many of you have seen the skit where it's this thing they do every once in a while? It's called When Keeping It Real Goes Wrong. And then I had them. They're like, what is this going to be about? What is Heckman talking about now? So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's this idea of being educational, but also trying to bring a blend of entertainment in. And that's why I started these top three was like, we can showcase ourselves as people, not the
Uh-huh.
ivory tower academic side of us. So, you just
Uh-huh.
come on and you showcase something different that we don't normally talk about, but showcases who we are just as
Mhm.
random people. And that's the most
Uh-huh.
important thing, I think. It's part of the accessibility of the history field and the humanities is making
Yeah.
this accessible. And this is why I wanted to do the top three stuff and why I picked so many different kinds, because there'll be so many different kinds of people coming in and out. And we've done cartoons together. And I literally probably have about 20 other top three events listed that
Yeah.
can be done, and we'll have different people come in and do that kind of stuff. But
Yeah.
it's the education meets entertainment and combining the two and bringing out
Yeah.
these kinds of conversations and ideas,
Yeah.
and that's what it's about for me. Just let your hair
Yep.
down, even though I don't have much and you got a haircut, uh, and have some fun and enjoy
Yep.
it, because
Yep.
life's too damn short. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. 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 Well, and
but
some of our best work comes out when we're having fun.
yeah,
When
yeah,
we're doing things that we enjoy.
yeah.
Um, and I think you make a really important point about we're part of an important um we're part of an important change in our chapter of academia, the history of kind of scholarship in
Mhm.
American history. In that, we don't come from guys like you and I and so many others. We don't come from the ivory tower backgrounds,
Mm-mm.
right? We come
Mm.
from working class backgrounds,
Yep.
very different experiences,
Yep.
and through that we have different types of questions and we have different types of viewpoints, and we by doing what you do, by doing what I do, these unique things, we are enhancing the story of American life.
Mhm.
What we know about how people experience the past.
Mhm.
And I think it's so important. It's such a cool thing to be a part of. Whether all of our colleagues in academia always recognize that that's what's happening or not.
Right.
Um, I I I I want you to know I see what you're doing, John, and I think it's awesome,
Thank
and I think it's important.
thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, man.
Well, I'm so glad you're having fun with your research, because
Yeah,
it's such a fun topic. And
yeah,
I just had Kate Strasden was on, and that video will drop tomorrow. We talked about fashion history and how uh, she actually brings up in her book how sometimes she has been seen as kind of an outsider. People roll their eyes at her because she's a fashion historian, not
yeah.
realizing that she's having the time of her life, and
Yes, yes.
and she's
They're the
like
ones
you,
that are missing out.
right? And it's like you, where you can be like, I wrote a book on the Peanuts comic strip and geopolitics at the time, and now you're working on Batman. You're working on something that inspires you or makes you want to get out of bed, and get
Hmm. Yep,
get moving. And
yep, yep.
that's a lesson for everybody, is to find that thing that you're really passionate
Yeah,
about. And if you're into history, if you work in the history field or you're thinking about getting into the history field, um, it's the thing of you got to study what you love, because
yeah,
this is your life when
yeah.
you're getting in there and you're doing this stuff. But you
Yeah.
can literally study anything because everything has a history. It's just finding the people that
Mhm.
support you properly to do that. And
Mhm.
you know, I'm looking forward to seeing the Batman book when it comes out. I'm gonna
Yeah.
have it sent to a different nation, but you know, it's a little extra postage.
Hey,
But
well,
hey,
we'll get it to you, man. We'll
yeah.
make sure you get a copy. Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I appreciate
Yeah,
that. But
dude.
Blake, it was great to have you on again, my friend. I really appreciate you and your friendship and
Thanks, buddy.
the good times we have.
Yeah, man. It's always one of my favorite spots. So anytime you just let me know the time and the place and I'm there, buddy.
We'll do it. We'll do it. Thank
All
you to
right.
everybody who has been logged in and has watched us along the way. We really appreciate you. Thank you for the votes. And I know that many of you are going to be seeing this after you have the ability to vote and do all that. But we hope that you will drop your picks in the comment section because that would mean a great deal.
Yeah.
I want to know what all you watched in the 1980s if you're old enough. And if you're not, what reruns did you watch in the 90s? Because this stuff carried over for a long time. And we'd
Uh,
love to get to know you better that way. So thank you for tuning in on my channel. It really means a lot to me. Blake, thank you again, my friend.
Thanks, dude. Have a great night.